Hello my friends, and welcome to this video, which is pretty much the Legion wrap-up. So this week dawned the last artifacts that needed to go up. And one question that I have been getting quite a bit from fellow WoW fans is, since I've had access to the beta, and I've done all of the variation, or all of the classes and specs, not only with the artifacts, but also the Broken Shore. I've done a lot of work on the Demon Hunters to be able to show you guys the starting zone and all of that stuff, is that with all of the changes, they all virtually look different to some extent. Like, I'm not saying every class got a major overhaul, but there are differences enough that I actually do think to some extent they will compel interest from various sorts of players. And so people actually were asking, so how does this affect your experience going into Legion? Like, what artifacts are you going to get? How are you going to play these characters? This is going to be kind of similar to like Preach doing selecting a main, things like that. But I'm going to go through all the classes and just tell you kind of my viewpoint on them, and like what specs and classes, or what spec for each class that I would play, because I'm a very alt heavy kind of guy, so I'm probably going to be getting these artifacts for my characters anyway. So let's just go ahead and get started. And we're going to start off with the class that is debuting at Legion, which is the Demon Hunter. I can honestly tell you both specs are fun as far as I am concerned, and I think Vengeance is like right in the middle as far as tanking rakes go. I think the top tank right now is the Guardian Druid on the beta anyway, and then we have the Vengeance Demon Hunter pretty much in the middle of the ranks. I can honestly tell you that I would probably be selective about it. I mean, obviously, I'm going to have a Demon Hunter alt. That will be an interesting thing to have, just to be able to get exploration videos and things like that done for WoW content. So I will probably just have a separate Havoc Demon Hunter and a separate Vengeance Demon Hunter with a Havoc off spec, just to make sure that I can get through questing and things like that. Because they have Blizzard has said that as soon as you hit endgame, it is actually possible to reset your artifact power. It's just very expensive. Now, as of this video, I don't think they've changed their mind on it, but people will let me know in the comments anyway. So I think both specs are very solid for the Demon Hunter. There are a couple of complaints that I have with the playstyle of Vengeance, but I think they've slowly gotten fixed as the beta has progressed. So, because I remember going through the Demon Hunter starting zone as Vengeance and having a lot of problems, but by the time I actually recorded the Eldraki Warblades video, a lot of those things had been fixed. They'd already implemented better damage, things like that for that quest. So yeah, I like both of the specs right off the bat, but I honestly think that I would probably just have like an Exploration Demon Hunter just to get footage with, and he would be Havoc, just so that we could get to places faster. And the Vengeance one would be probably my main, because I do like to have the tanking and the healing classes wherever I can get them. So, starting with the Demon Hunter, let's go ahead and go in from cloth to plate on all the various classes as kind of a wrap-up and my opinions on it. The other thing, too, that I'm also going to answer, some people are actually asking what I thought was the best artifact quest of that class. So, really quick, with the Demon Hunter, we had Varadis's Blades. I can't remember. Twin Blades of the Deceiver, and then we had the Eldraki Warblades. To be honest, I thought both were kind of meh. We've seen some pretty epic quests in the Legion beta as far as artifact quests go, and so it's kind of hard to make that assessment. But if I were to judge them based off of what I experienced in each one of them, I really do think that they're on par with each other. I like the fact that we can take on Varadis Felsoul in the Havoc questline, but I also do like the fact that we're taking on another betrayed Demon Hunter for the Eldraki Warblades. So I'm kind of partial to both of them. I think they're very 50-50. So I like them both. With the cloth classes, let's start with the Mage, because this one I actually have legit opinions on. As far as artifact quests go, Fellow Malorn took us into Icecrown. We also had Ebon Chill, which took us to a Legion camp to take on Baladur. And then we also had Aluneth, which was the first time I had gone through the Nexus quests. I don't know why I'm digging out the caffeine. That's not going to help with this video. Okay, we're back. I just needed to get a drink. So with Aluneth, that was the first time that I had experienced the Nexus quest line, and I liked it. As far as the artifact quests go, though, I almost want to say that the best one was probably Aluneth, followed up by Ebon Chill. I'm not against what they did with Fellow Malorn, but it really feels like a lot more effort was put into trying to make a difference between, or trying to make Ebon Chill and Aluneth unique, and Fellow Malorn just kind of fell into insert Blood Elf lore here. So at that point, I'd probably say that the best artifact quest for the mage was Aluneth. I really did like how that played out. I would actually dare say a little bit more than I did with Light's Wrath, but we'll get there when we get there. As far as the specs that I would be playing, so I'm gonna base this off of the dual spec kind of system. With Demon Hunters, you can't really do that because it's 2 specs. But with mages, you can have 3 specs, and I've already decided my mage is going to go fire, because I do love Fellow Malorn. I love the lore around it. I'm just kind of impartial towards the quest. And then my off-spec will be Ebon Chill. I really did like how Frost plays. I like how Fire plays as well. I was kind of drawn away from Arcane. I know that a lot of the mana management stuff has been taken out of Arcane, but it just doesn't, like, in Warlords of Draenor, Arcane felt fun, and it feels like a lot of the elements of Arcane, or the fun elements, the parts that I liked, have been taken out of Arcane. So that's pretty much my decision. I'm going to be going Fire Frost on my mage, but the best artifact quest was Aluneth for Arcane mages. That being said, I've kind of gone over those details. Let's go into the next class, which would be the Warlock. So I'm just going to go into the armor classes. That's the best way to remember these. So for the Warlock, I was hoping that since we had really great artifacts for each one, we were going to get really great gameplay styles for each one. And, well, let's go into the artifacts first. So with Ulthalesh, the Affliction one, we went into the Dark Riders, which is a storyline that you could see with a couple of them. The second was the Scepter of Sargeras, which actually took us on a huge quest to go to Sholomance, to Tol Barad, and then eventually to the Tomb of Sargeras to claim the Scepter of Sargeras, and then turn on Gul'dan. Whereas Demonology took us to, I believe it was labeled as a remote Legion world where we took out Mephistroth, who actually was the keeper of the Skull of the Mannery. So at that point, favorite artifact quest for Warlock, I would say Scepter of Sargeras is up there. The Destruction Warlock quest was really cool in the fact that we basically had to befriend the Shadow Council and then betray them, which is very classic Warlock to me. But a very close second would be the Demonology quest line, because I do like the fact that we were freeing a sentient skull, and I just think that was actually a great concept. Although I did find it funny and a little buggy that when you free the Dreadscar Rift, which is the class hall, Jagganoth, I think was his name, works for Mephistroth. So after you've killed Mephistroth, you see Mephistroth. But yeah, I would say Scepter of Sargeras was the better one story-wise, and then a very close second being Demonology. As far as specs, though, Affliction, I've enjoyed in previous expansions, but the playstyle has significantly changed as far as I'm concerned, where I think that Ulthalesh offers a really cool concept of being able to suck out souls and utilize that. The playstyle was kind of overly complicated for Affliction compared to previous expansions, at least to me. So I'm not a fan of Affliction. And in fact, where I'm primarily a Destruction Warlock, I'm probably going to be swapping over to Demonology. Demonology was really fun to play. I'm starting to like the Pet Menagerie builds that are out there for those who have it. So Beast Mastery Hunter, Unholy Death Knight, etc. And with Demonology, it's especially more appropriate for it. I have not liked the direction since Wrath, where we became a demon. We used Metamorphosis to become a demon, and therefore you have your own bar, and you're supposed to be able to feel more powerful that way. I've always looked at Demonology as basically like a summoning spec, where you're the typical warlock always trying to gather more power. You're trying to get more demons into your sway, so therefore you have an army. And I like the fact that Demonology is finally going in that direction. I will say also, I am not fond of the destruction aspect that the Embers are now gone. I love the Infernal Embers, or the Burning... It was either Infernal or Burning Embers that was the resource for destruction, whereas Affliction used Soul Shards, and Demonology used like a Metamorphosis gauge. Now it's just all Soul Shards. And I'm not fond of that. I wasn't fond of the Metamorphosis bar, and I don't know what you would do in that regard. Maybe like create a bigger portal to summon a bigger demon. But the fact that they're all into Soul Shards as a resource is kind of disappointing to me. I like the idea of the Burning Embers for destruction, and they took it away and gave me Soul Shards. And I know that that's not a big complaint to make, but it's mine. I'm actually a little irritated by it. So yeah, I would probably go with Demonology in Legion and then Destruction. Because Destruction's one of those specs that I actually don't think has changed a whole lot. Its rotation has stayed fairly similar. I would actually say probably from Mists to Warlords to here. And the starting of that being Cataclysm. So there's not a whole lot of changes to it, but Destruction's one of those specs that I don't think needs to change a whole lot. Although I am also kind of frustrated that they made all of your AoE, unless you build into it and you have the Soul Shards, it's not worth it. So basically making Destruction... Like, if you're going into a raid, you will emphasize Destruction AoE spec, and then when you get to the boss, you're going to emphasize a single target spec. That's just cumbersome, that's complicated to me, and doesn't really help with the flavor. At least the flavor as far as I'm concerned with the class. So Demonology with my second spec being Destruction. I don't want to get rid of Destruction. I've already done the Green Fire quest, and I like a lot of the spells now that they are Fellfire instead of regular fire. So that's Warlock. So my favorite one was the Scepter of Sargeras for Destruction, and the specs that I'm probably going to go with are Demonology followed by Destruction. Because and a lot of people will be like, well, why don't you just work on all of them? There won't be enough artifact power, I don't think, to be able to do that. Everything that I've been reading is that you'll be able to strongly support up to 2 specs. More like 1, and then you're going to be able to have a good, strong support spec. But like for a Druid where you have 4 specs, I don't see being able to have full talent trees in all 4 specs. I don't think that's possible. So that's Warlock. The next cloth wearer would be the Priest. Okay, so with the artifact storylines, we had Toure, which was basically going to a Legion world to rescue a party and then get Toure back. Then we had Light's Wrath for Discipline, which took us into the Nexus, and we had to claim a Scarlet Crusade attempt at recreating Ashbringer. And then finally you had Xalatoth, Blade of the Black Empire. And with Xalatoth, we went into Tyr's Tomb. This is going to really suck for the generalized tomb, or for the generalized artifact quests like the Dark Riders, is that I don't hate them, but I did them a couple of times, and the fact that they weren't that different from each other actually kind of bothered me. I like the fact that each class has had unique ones along the way. I would actually dare say Toure is probably the unique one here, because Nexus Volt was done for Arcane. Actually, I'd probably say Toure, because a lot of Legion World ones are done. I'd probably say Light's Wrath was the unique one. As far as the experience goes, I'd probably say it'd be a tie, to be honest, because there are elements of all three that I liked, but the one that would be strongly in the lead would probably be Toure. I do like the fact that basically you come in the aftermath of a Legion attack, and you have to heal and get all of the horrible influence out of it. But I also do like going into the Nexus Vault and having to basically out-heal all of the holy fire that Light's Wrath is trying to incur on you. So it would be a very close tie. Zolototh was cool. I like the fact that the blade talks to you, but the quest to get to it wasn't all that interesting. I really think they could have fleshed that out with more Old God lore, especially since this is really the only Old God-based weapon. So that was really disappointing. So yeah, a very close tie with Toure and Light's Wrath for the story. As far as spec for mine, I have a bit of a confession to make. I've leveled a priest, and in the last couple of expansions, you either level Shadow or what the heck are you thinking, unless you're willing to dungeon grind. And I get that. But as far as I'm concerned, Shadow's never been a fun spec for me to play. Until Legion. The Insanity Gauge really helped with it. I especially like that there's a talent that eventually you don't have to rely on constantly channeling Mind Flay. You can eventually do Mind Spike, which that ability has never... I don't think it's been used properly since its inception in Cataclysm. But I do like the fact that you actually will have bolts of shadow energy, kind of like a mage. You're a shadow mage. Or in Holy's case, you're a holy mage, as well as a healer. So I will be going shadow on my priest. And then with the two healing specs, I'm going to go holy on this one. I liked how holy played, especially in the fact that I could use things like smite when people didn't need healing. But that's something that can be said of all the healer classes. I like the fact that they've incorporated DPS elements into each of the specs. That's great. They should do that, just to give something else for us to do. But Holy to me felt more like the kind of healer that I want to be, where I want to be able to... I want to say protect, but protect is not the word, because that's a tanking kind of concept. But being able to heal all the raw damage that's going out. And for Discipline, I didn't hate it, but I can already tell that it's going to be a spec that maybe veteran healers would appreciate more than I would. I don't heal on a regular basis. I have healing characters, but it's not something that I do regularly. And I feel more like Discipline was meant for them, as a unique way to be able to heal through doing damage, things like that. And so I'm not knocking it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea, but it's not one where I would think I would excel at. I think like veteran healers and lovers of Discipline would appreciate that spec more than I would. So yeah, I'm going Shadow and Holy. Nothing against Discipline. I think Discipline's fine, but it's definitely got a learning curve to it, and unless you want the challenge, it may not be for you. That, and I just like the fact that Toure is basically a Naru. You're holding a Naru as a weapon. So that's the Cloth Wearers. And we've also done the Demon Hunters. So let's go ahead and get into the Leather Wearers, and I'm going to start with Druid, because Druid is the most specs in the game. And we went through the quests, and I thought they were all fairly good. With balance, you had to deal with the Dark Riders again. Although I would say that if I were to rank the Dark Rider quests that you deal with, I think I'd put balance higher. I like the fact that there's kind of a Worgen infection going on, and then you go into Karazhan, and you fix it by grabbing the Scythe of Elune. However, very close second would be Affliction, where you are following the memories of the original wielder of Ulthalesh. So, so that's what you did for balance. For Feral, you went to the Shrine of Ashamain, and then eventually went into Suramar to claim the Fangs from a follower. For the Guardian, you went into the Emerald Dream to rescue Ursoc, as well as gain access to his claws. And you basically get to see foreshadowing into him being a boss in the Emerald Nightmare raid. And then finally with Gahanir, for Restoration, you went out to Hyjal to cleanse Gahanir's corruption, as well as be able to fend off a Legion attack by helping your fellow druids. I would say the best quest out of that is the Guardian quest. I do like the foreshadowing of the Emerald Nightmare. You actually do get to see a Shade of Xavius capture Ursoc, and I think that's a great concept. With a close second being would be Gahanir. I actually do like that one amongst the healer quests. It felt appropriate considering what you were trying to do with it, and the fact that this staff was already corrupted by the Nightmare and you had to go in and purify it. Not only, well, you had to purify it, but you also had to fend off Legion forces trying to reclaim it. So I would say Guardian is probably the better quest, with a close second being Gahanir. Nothing against Balance and Feral, but they were kind of generalized as far as I was concerned, although Balance I'd probably put higher in the Dark Riders quests. As far as my specs are going, well, I think it's fairly obvious because I've said it numerous times. My Druid is my main, and I have played Guardian since Cataclysm up until Warlords, and then I swapped to Balance because I wanted more of a challenging gameplay, and I hadn't done DPS. I'd done tanking and healing for who knows how many years, and more emphasis on tanking with that. So I'm going to go Balance this time around because I find it absolutely hilarious that I am wielding the very cause of the Curse of the Worgen, and I have a Worgen Druid. So yeah, my main is going to be Balance, and my off-spec is going to be Guardian. Mainly because I like what they're doing with Guardian, and I like having the viability of being able to walk into a pug and say, yeah, I can tank if you guys want to just look for a regular DPS. And since Guardian is looking really, really good, who knows? I might actually get roped into raid tanking a little bit. So yeah, Balance and Guardian are my specs, and the preferred quest line would be Guardian followed by Resto. So the next one is going to be the Rogue. And I got heat for this, and I don't care. I don't play a Rogue. And so a lot of the roguish elements I don't get, and I have no problem admitting that. Like, one of my last on the list alts is a Rogue. Like, I've worked on it just to be able to help. My wife plays a Rogue, so I play it so that I can help her out with the decisions and stuff like that, as well as guide her to the proper websites. But I will admit that I was intrigued when they said combat was going away in favor of Outlaw, and that Outlaw would be more of like a piratey spec. So at that point, let's go through the artifacts. Outlaw, you're going out to Azuna to reclaim the Dreadblades from a admiral who's gone mad. Assassination, you're helping out Grona with an attempt on Anduin Rin's life, I believe was what it was. So you have to sneak around in Stormwind and use your poisons to take care of the various Alliance forces, and then you go and take on the assassin who is set to try and take on try to take out Anduin from the Legion. And then Subtlety, you track down the wielders of, I can't remember I think it was supposed to be like a Dreadhound or something like the fangs of a Dreadhound, and you go onto a Legion world to claim them there. I would say the better quest, in my opinion, was the assassination one, just because you had interaction with a legit rogue character. Especially since I wanted to see stuff done with this current Garona, and I love the fact that she basically hands the blades over to you. She's like, I don't want these anymore. You can have them. Because it makes sense in that aspect for Garona. These blades have been nothing but death to her. So I will say the best quest out of there was the assassination one. As far as my specs go, On my rogue, I've been combat for a long time because I don't play a sneaky kind of character. I'm not that, like when I play D&D and things like that, I've never played a shifty, sneaky character. I've always been like a noble knight or a warrior kind of thing. And so this one's fairly obvious. My main spec's going to be outlaw. I really do like the feel of that spec. I know a lot of rogues are irritated with it, but I don't have those issues, mainly because I know that my rogue is going to be an alt. So my main spec will be Outlaw, and my off spec will be Assassination. And the reason I'm going Assassination, I appreciate subtlety, but if there were actual specs that frustrated me, subtlety was one of them. In the fact that, granted, again, I don't play rogues, but the fact that they try to integrate so much shadow damage and so much stealth and evasion into it, that it just didn't feel fun to me, whereas I actually did get a kind of a kick out of being able to poison my enemies further and further, especially in the fact that the Kingslayers actually do give a unique poison. So that's kind of my viewpoint. I'm going to go Outlaw and Assassination, and I've always wanted to mess around with Assassination. I like the emphasis on poisons and things like Mutilate, or abilities like Mutilate. So with that, we have Rogue. Oh, Monk. So let's see. The quest lines that we did for Brewmaster was going into the Jade. Well, first of all, we did all of those errands for the Monkey King, and eventually ended up in the Jade Temple to claim Fuzan. Then for Windwalker, we went on a journey with Lily to the Skywall to claim the. Oh, I can't remember what they were called, but the hand blades from Typhinius, the supposed new Lord of Air. And then with Mistweaver, we just went into the Terrace of Endless Spring to claim Shailoon from the corruption there brought on by the Legion. Again, I hate to go down this route, but I would actually say that Brewmaster and Windwalker are tied. I like the fact that the Monkey King sent us out on various errands to basically have us earn his trust, because, you know, we were basically asking for this great weapon that he knew about, and so we had to we had to work with him. I like that concept. And Lily, I love the fact that we integrated Lily into that, because I always kind of felt bad for Mist of Pandaria because we never did a whole lot with her individually. Like, we did in the Valley of the Four Winds, but after that, not really. We mostly interacted with Chen. And I always thought that was kind of disappointing. So I like the fact that we go all the way to Skywall, and we take out Typhinius, we get these new weapons, and the first thing that she basically says is, if you tell Uncle Chen I did this, I will kill you. So I do like the fact that we went on all of these adventures, and we actually had one involving air elementals. We have a couple involving water elementals and fire, but I like the fact that we had that. So yeah, it's going to be tied. As far as my own spec, well, I'm going to duel this up, because people have also asked how am I going to be utilizing Drakfu when he's near the end, if I want to do things like dungeons or stuff like that with him. His primary spec is going to be Windwalker. I've already kind of decided that. I think that's the best way to go, because if I have to record footage with him, I want to be just a straight up raw DPS spec. That's easier to get through dungeons, and it's easier to try and get groups for. As well as footage, at least from my perspective, footage from a DPSer looks better than it does from a tanking or a healing perspective. It's preferably range DPS, but melee DPS would work too. And his off spec will probably be Brewmaster, just because I like the way tanking works on a Brewmaster. However, my actual main, which is my main monk, is going to get the opposite. It's going to get Brewmaster followed by Windwalker. Nothing against Mistweaver. I would like to have a dedicated Mistweaver monk. And I don't want that on my main. I don't usually want that. If I have a tank or a tanking class or a healing class, I tend to want to go with a support DPS class so that I can, if I need to go farming or something like that, I can. So, and I played Mistweaver a little bit, but I tend to like Brewmaster a little bit more with monks. So that's going to be my pick. I like how Brewmaster plays and how Windwalker plays compared to Mistweaver. I think that's all the leather wearers, because we already covered demon hunters. So let's go into the male wearers, and that's easy. So hunters. The artifacts that we went for were Titan Strike, which was basically working with Thorum in an ancient, or working with Thorum and going into an ancient tomb in Stormheim to claim Titan Strike from its previous owner. We dealt with a lot in Eldor. We dealt with Mimiron, and then we eventually went to Thorum. And the fact that at the very end, you basically heal and get a new pet out of it, one of Thorum's pet hounds. With marksmanship, we went to a random Legion world to try and find Illyria Windrunner with Varisa Windrunner. I was kind of disappointed because I went in there from a Horde perspective. I wanted to go in with Sylvanas, and that didn't happen. But I guess they've got her quest kind of set up. And then survival, we were basically hunting the animal that had Talon Claw in it. Well, we were hunting it with the descendant of Holm High Mountain. So I would dare say my favorite, basically from a lore perspective, would have been marksmanship, because this is one of those things that people have been asking for years, and I've wanted to see this, especially when we were dealing with a bow that's literally called Legacy of the Windrunners. Well, actually, you know what? I've got to put that as second, because there really wasn't a whole lot to it aside from we're going on a secret mission to claim the bow. It just feels to me like Titan Strike had a little bit more put into it as far as the quest line was concerned. I'm going to tie him up, because I love the lore with Illyria, but Titan Strike had a little bit more of an engaging quest as far as I was concerned, where we actually had to go work with Mimiron and then eventually to Thorum and then heal his hound in order to get it as kind of a bonus and refuel Titan Strike. So that's going to be a tie between marksmanship and beast mastery. As far as spec, it's going to be the other way around. I tended to like marksmanship's abilities and set more than I did beast mastery. Like I said, beast mastery is supposed to be a beast menagerie set, but after playing demonology, because beast mastery was the first one I took on, after playing demonology and unholy Death Knight, I feel like beast mastery could have gotten a lot more work put into it. Like, we could have had more things based around like an animal stampede, like being able to call in more dire beasts, or being able to have Murder of Crows as like a base ability for beast mastery instead of a talent. So at that point, my main is going to be going, or my main hunter would be going marksmanship as his main spec, and beast mastery as his off spec. So that's the way it's going to go. Nothing against survival. Well, everything against survival. I actually didn't like the survival playstyle. I don't think a whole lot of effort has been put into it just yet. It felt too much like other classes. I didn't like the fact that I think it was called Harpoon, felt like a reverse death grip. Basically, just you launching yourself at the enemy. And in fact, Outlaw Rogue does the exact same thing. And for Outlaw Rogue, it didn't bother me as much as it did survival. The other part that kind of bothered me was survival always had kind of an emphasis on traps, and this one didn't feel too much like that. It still felt like a very default melee spec, but if I wanted to use my traps, sure I could, but there's not any emphasis on it. So survival, I think, needs a lot of work. But I think they can still do a melee hunter spec. I think that'll work. They just need to refine it a little bit more. So the next male one would be the Shaman. I'm going to go ahead and magic cut there. So the next one will be the Shaman. And let's go through the quests here really quick. Enhancement obviously had you go reclaim the Doomhammer after Thrall got 20 stacks of Butterfingers and let it fall into Deep Home. Then you had to befriend Therazane while you were there to go into a cave and to claim the Doomhammer. And I'm going to go into a video later on this, on how I think that, considering that this is a weapon with a lot of lore attached to it, the quest felt really weak to me. And it still does. Like, I've gone back on my own video a couple of times and said, no, there's this could have been so much more, and it wasn't. So at that point, I was disappointed with the whole thing. But moving on, the next one would be Elemental, which was the Fist of Ra-Den, engaging in a full-on tournament, and working with Rhaegar, Lily, and Chen, who are heroes of the storm, to claim the Fist of Ra-Den from the Legion. And then finally, Sharastal, Scepter of the Tides, re-engaging with the Naga, to be able to, or going back into the Throne of Tides to reclaim Sharastal from there. I would dare say the best quest in that whole thing, as far as I was concerned, was the Fist of Ra-Den. I enjoyed that a lot more than I did Doomhammer as well as Sharastal. Sharastal, I thought, and this didn't make the video, but there were a lot of buggy issues that I was having in the Throne of Tides part of that. And I also didn't like the fact that, well, again, I was on a beta character, so live I probably won't have this problem. But, you know, I want to be able to have that. If I'm going to go into Vashir, I want to be able to have that Seahorse mount. So I didn't like that things were kind of stretched out. Not too bad considering Vashir, but it could have been better. So the best quest was the Fist of Ra-Den. And the specs that I'm going to be going with, I've already answered this. My main spec on my Shaman is Resto, and that's not changing. In fact, of all the healing specs, Resto still feels very much the spec that I would want to heal on. It feels very much how I would want to heal. So my main spec is going to be Restoration, but my off spec is going to be Elemental. Like, if I have to pick one of the DPS specs, I liked how Enhancement played, but there's so many problems with that quest, as well as I do think there's a couple other things that can be ironed out with the Enhancement spec to make it even more fun. So yeah, I'd be going Resto and Elemental. I really did like the Fist of Ra-Den. So let's see, so that's Shaman. And then finally we have the Plate Wearers. I'm going to go into Warrior first. And again, Warrior has a couple of videos coming in for Perspective Artifacts, because I do want to do those videos in its due course. So, Arms. We went into the Tomb of Tyr to reclaim the Arms weapon out of literally the body of Zakaj. Fury, we went out to the Follower of Helia to claim the War Swords of the Warblades of the Valajar from him. And then Protection just took us out to the tomb of the wielder, the previous owner of the Scale of the Earth Warden. I would dare say a lot, at least in my opinion, more effort was put into the Arms spec. As far as I was concerned, I was actually kind of disappointed with the Warrior quests to some extent. I felt like more could have been done with the Scale of the Earth Warden. I didn't like the fact that they announced right off that it was going to be buried in Stormheim, when we did have a dungeon called the Lair of the Earth Warden. I'm like, it would have been really cool to actually go there, claim the Scale, and then have it be forged into a shield, instead of having all of that already happened. So that was kind of disappointing to me. It was the same tomb that we have to deal with for a couple of other quests. And Fury, I like the spec, but I didn't like the storyline that they were trying to tell. It was Odin versus Helia, and I felt like more could have been attached to it instead of just throwing you in the area, having you take out some Kavaldir, and move on. I felt like more could have been done with it. But again, if there was one artifact that I had issues with, it is the Fury artifact, and I'll get to that in a later video. So yeah, the better artifact quest as far as I was concerned was the Arms Warrior, going into Tyr's tomb to literally claim a weapon that had been in the head of not an old god, but a Cathraxi general for so long that it eventually kind of adopted shadow properties to it. If anything, it's like, if Zolototh is the legit old god weapon, the Arms Warrior weapon is right up there because of the corruption. So I like that idea. As far as my own spec, I tank on a warrior, so protection is going to be one of them. And I'm anxious because here's the thing: I didn't like the quest. I don't hate protection as a spec. I thought it was enjoyable. I thought that they've made a lot of improvements over time, and it still feels right to me. It still feels appropriate. My DPS spec, however, is gonna go with Fury because I like arms, but there's too many emphasis on specific abilities in arms that I think takes away from the experience. And the emphasis that Fury puts on things like Whirlwind and the fact they got Bladestorm as a talent just feels more fun to me. Like being able to wield these two big two-handers of destruction and being able to be that berserker if I want to be felt more fun. I'm not fond of the artifact, yes, but I'll get over it. Paladin. So we had, again, Tyr's Tomb, going to claim the Silver Hand for Holy. For protection, we went into the tomb, or first of all, we went on a quest to find where the tomb, where Truthguard was, which is, again, the tomb in Stormheim where you go for Beast Mastery and Protection Warriors. And then Retribution, you go and get the Ashbringer. So I think it's fairly obvious what my favorite artifact quest was for Paladins, and that was the Ashbringer. I like the fact that you go all the way out to Uther's tomb to find out that Tyrion is alive, and therefore you start up a full-on rescue mission to go get him, which doesn't prove to be fruitful, which eventually leads to meeting up with Balnazar and not even taking him out, and then claiming the Ashbringer after having a very heartfelt speech from Tyrion Fordring. So yeah, my favorite artifact quest, bar none, for the Paladin is Ashbringer. As far as my own spec is concerned, well, my main spec for my main Paladin is protection. So that's probably not going to change. I especially like some of the appearances for Truthguard, since I am a fan of the Judgment set, and I would love to be able to get that third appearance to couple that with the Judgment set. So I'm going to be going with Truthguard. My second spec, however, is going to be Retribution like it always has been. Obviously, I want to wield the Ashbringer. Obviously, I like the quest. I had lots of issues with Silverhand, and I was having a lot of problems getting into the lore that was trying to be displayed there in the Holy Quest line. And also, Holy Healing has changed a lot in Legion. I liked how it was in Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria to an extent, but it's changed enough that I'm not that interested in it anymore. I like the fact that with the Silver Hand, I was actually asking in the quest, why do we have a two-hander as an artifact? It's because there's an emphasis to be able to do damage yourself. I like that idea. But I just don't like how the healing works for Holy right now. So, yeah, I'll be going Prot and Retribution. And finally, Death Knights. So for Blood, we went to a random Legion world to claim the Maw of the Damned from its original wielder. For Unholy, we went to claim Apocalypse from the Dark Riders. And for Frost, we went to claim the Shards of Frostmourne to create the Blades of the Fallen Prince. Gee, I wonder what my favorite one is in this one. It's the Blades of the Fallen Prince. I did like the fact that we had these shades of souls that were originally trapped in Frostmourne that were showing up, including the original paladins of the Silver Hand that were murdered in the Warcraft 3 mission so long ago. So I did like that concept. I also just love the fact that I can wield Frostmourne. And Frost has always been my preferential DPS spec for a DK, so I can already tell you that Frost will probably be my main spec for my main Death Knight. Now, I do like tanking, and I do like what they've done with the Maw of the Damned, but dang it, man. I almost want to... If there was one spec, or one time when I wanted to experiment with the artifact power just to see if I could power up Unholy, I would. I liked, of the Pet Menagerie builds, Demonology is like my top one, and in the middle is Unholy. I love how Unholy works right now. It feels very reminiscent of how it worked in Wrath. So at that point, I would love to be able to put in that extra effort to do that. I don't know how plausible that's going to be, but who knows? I might be completely wrong, and a druid can fuel all 4 specs. They just have to, work tirelessly. So that pretty much goes into my Legion wrap-up. As far as the other things, the Broken Shore was great from both sides, and I like the fact that it wasn't just rinse, lather, repeat for both sides. There were unique parts of it and unique enemies. The Demon Hunter starting zone, I cannot wait. And it's one of those things that makes me sad that I'm going on vacation, or I'm on vacation as of this video, and I can't play the Demon Hunters as soon as they launch. I have to wait until I get home. So that's disappointing, but I like the experience that I got thus far from it, which was being able to go to Mardoom and then finally escape from the Vault of the Wardens. And that's not all of it. Like there's a Black Temple section of that too, and we've not seen it yet. I'm assuming to keep certain lore pieces out, as well as maybe even cinematics for it. So that's going to go ahead and wrap kind of wrapping things up with Legion. I am excited, and the beta has only encouraged that excitement. And we are literally almost there. Legion is almost out, and we can start playing the game live. I'm excited for it, and can't wait to get this game in my hands. So with that, I'm also especially thankful that you guys have appreciated and watched the Legion beta videos. I was really kind of worried when I started those up on how they would work out, and I'm glad you guys liked it, because I enjoyed doing those videos for you. But that's going to go ahead and do it for me. That's pretty much my Legion beta wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching the videos. Thank you guys so much for continuing to suggest other WoW content that I could be doing. And of course, WoW content is not done on this channel. We will figure out ways to be able to do more WoW content for you guys. But in the meantime, I need to wrap things up for this one. So I will see you guys next time.